Woo, like David Lee Roth said, this must be just like living in paradise, baby. Of course, the podcast champion got the belt out right now because we are live and we are doing video. That's right. This is your September Sovryn Tech Patreon only Q&A hangout. And there is full-on video for this. And so, put on a little bit of a show here. Got the little belt. Just tap it quick. Woo! Like I like to do every time I start recording. Always a good reminder. Look at the size of that baby. That is the real deal right there. That is a beautiful. I don't want to tell you how much I paid for that. Of course, I earned it. God damn it. I'm the podcast champion. But anyway, it is time for that hangout and we need to get into it. Of course, this is being recorded on, just put a little date on it. This is Sunday, the 16th. Or September 16th, 2018. And, it's been a couple weeks since we did the hangout. I think August hangout we got in just at the end of the month. Of course, that was because, my schedule was just so crazy because I ended up going to Europe for a couple of weeks, of course, with the lovely and hyper intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy, the boss. Woo! And what a time that was, which I talked about on Sovryn Tech Prime episodes. All right, getting a little comfortable here. Crossing the legs, laying back. What's I did get some preloaded questions for this actual episode or for this hangout. But of course, feel free. I know there's already some of you watching on YouTube Live right now, which is where Hangouts shifts everything through. I mean, with Google, you don't fucking know what to call anything, and you don't know what services are still out there. In fact, I was really, we talked about it on this week's episode, was episode 295 of Sovryn Tech, the Prime episode. That how they Google killed Inbox, and thankfully, like a couple days later, I guess no, it'd be today, right? Because yesterday was when we talked about it. Thankfully, anyway, tech journalists finally started coming out and saying, Google's just like burning their faithful. Like, I mean, the people that will try whatever Google tells them to try, they just keep burning them because these people like start baking it, start really relying upon their services. And then Google will just cancel it on them. And it's true. That's exactly what's happening. I mean, again, I say it all the time. We talked about it over the years as they have canceled product after product. Don't rely on any Google service. I'm still in awe that Google Plus is even a thing, even though I know parts of Google Plus have been taken away. Like Hangouts was originally a part of Google Plus, and that's gone. And so on. I mean, just don't trust that fucking company. So let's see. We got in the YouTube chat. I really hope Google Play doesn't go. Yeah, was it Android Market? Was that the original name for the Play Store? But yeah, like Google Play Music, like I think that's on its that's on a clock. Like, I mean, it's a matter of time before Google Play goes away, or Google Play Music, I should say, not Google Play. Google Play is a lot of different products, right? But Google Play Music, I think or at least Google Play Music All Access is kind of on its way out because I think they're trying to run with YouTube Music or YouTube Remix or whatever the hell they call that. Again, how can you keep track of all the names of these fucking services that Google puts out there? But I agree. That would actually be a shame if they dropped their actual, even their music store part of Google Play would really be a shame because it's a great way to get some albums that's like they're the only ones that have them. I mean, there's been countless times where I've bought albums through Google Play. In fact, a couple of them, these are actually a little preview. These are both going to be albums of the week, so maybe I'm kind of cheating. These are both going to be albums of the week for this week's Wednesday Q&A, where we normally do one album a week, this is going to be two. But anyway, there's a guy, his name is Robert Tepper, and he did, you'll know the one song that I'm going to mention, and the song is No Easy Way Out, and you'll remember that from the Rocky IV soundtrack. Just a badass song, a badass scene in a badass movie. And yes, Rocky IV is a badass movie. Not my favorite Rocky. Rocky III is actually my favorite Rocky film. But regardless of that, anyway, everybody probably remembers that song, No Easy Way Out. I recently acquired these two albums. And believe me, I tried as a teenager to get my hands on these things. And like FYE, they wouldn't order them for me. I mean, like they had no idea. It wasn't in their system or anything. And at that time, I doubt these albums were even 10 years old. But anyway, this guy did come out with at least 2 or 3 albums, Robert Tepper, and they're fucking dynamite. Like if you like kind of, the stuff I'm into, like Stan Bush or even anything by Rick Springfield that isn't Jesse's Girl, because fuck that fucking song. Okay. Because people get stuck on that whenever they hear Rick Springfield and they don't listen to his literal 18 other albums that are just masterpieces. And I'm not kidding about that. Like, I mean, you can go to AMC, or what is it, allmusic.com? Is that the site that's been around forever that rates albums and everything? Read the reviews for Rick Springfield's albums, and it's going to be done by younger guys that are reviewing these albums, and they're just like, wow, you shouldn't sound that good at 60 and everything. I mean, people just don't fucking know, but that's because, I don't know. They either just want to listen to anything that isn't mainstream, or they just buy into what the mainstream is selling them. That's usually where people fall into as far as camps. But anyway, yeah. So Robert Tepper, this guy has 2 albums. I just recently heard them. Just finally got to listen to them. This is 20 years after I wanted to hear them the first time, right? And holy shit, were these albums phenomenal. But the way that I got them was through Google Play Music, because they had them available for like $9 a pop. And oh man, I was so pleased with that. But anyway, let's see what else we got here. Google Plus is the WNBA of social media. Woohoo! Ooh. I don't like that they don't have Eagles albums. Yeah. I mean, well, a lot of the different, well, I guess iTunes has some exclusives to it, right? And who knows what even like that iTunes, what is it, mastered for iTunes? Like you get the entire Kiss collection and it's mastered for iTunes. I don't know that there's any real difference. AC/DC was pretty much only on Kiss and everything. Let's see. Rob says, I hate that song so much. Jesse's Girl, I'm guessing he's talking about, which, yeah, I'm with you. Fuck that song. Anyway, let's see. We got another one. Damn, I need to watch the Rocky movies again and see Creed finally. Creed is a great movie. I mean, Creed is a genuinely great movie. I mean, that got a lot of really good, really positive press, which still amazes me. And Creed 2 is coming out. Is that this year that Creed 2 comes out? I can't wait for that. That's really exciting stuff. Anyway, let's get into so it was confirmed that the song that's hated is Jesse's Girl. Yeah, I hate that song. I mean, he has to play it every time I see him in concert. I get it that he has to play it, but fuck, does that guy have so many kick-ass songs. Even later stuff, like much later stuff, things that came out in the aughts. There's an album, Shock, Denial, Anger, and Acceptance. I challenge anyone to listen to that by Rick Springfield. And you tell me that sucks. There's no way. Like, you're full of shit, because it's such a broad album. It has such a broad range of styles. And I mean, there's like some really heavy stuff. Like there's a song called Jesus Saves, but it's not what you think. And there's just great shit on it. So it says, I bet he hates that song too. Yeah, I think Rick hates that song. He's actually at certain concerts, he's kind of hinted at the fact that he's not going to play. People will say, play Jesse's Girl. You get all your drunkards, yeah, play Jesse's Girl, man. Yeah. And he's just like, no, we're not going to play that. And unfortunately, he usually does end up doing it during an encore or something like that. But fuck, I wish he wouldn't. Let's see. Here's another comment. You like everything rock album that gets called a classic. Yeah, not everything. I mean, believe it or not, I'm not the biggest Led Zeppelin fan. I get it, but it just doesn't, that's how I feel about it. Okay. So yeah, it still gets played overly much on the radio too. Yeah, Jesse's Girl really does. All right. So why don't I get into some of the preloaded questions that I've got here? And again, feel free to ask questions in the Hangout if you want. Got a nice little crowd going on, or in the YouTube chat, I should say. Got a nice little crowd going on there. Let's see. Stallion, you have an impressive collection of memorabilia behind you in the BDSM studio, I must say. What do you think to others would be the weirdest thing in there, and how big is your studio anyways? Well, thank you for just asking about how big my studio is. Usually that question goes another direction. Let's see. So I guess this is, if you're listening to the audio version of this, which comes out shortly after the live Hangout is done, but I mean, the video is linked to in the audio version. So if you want to see the video, you can watch it as long as you have access to the audio version and you're a patron. Let me see. So you can't, I've actually changed, I've added a lot in here, but it's additions that you don't really see that are meant for future videos where the studio will get used more and seen more, and different camera angles are going to exist, but that's all stuff for the future. So like a lot of my little starships are actually in a shelf above me. Let's see here. I'll keep talking while I'm looking around. But yeah, there's been quite a few additions. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. So here, I'll actually show you two things. So because they're actually, ironically, they're hanging in the same spot, and this is something that people probably wouldn't expect me to have for a multitude of reasons. Of course, maybe you would expect me to have it. I don't know. But okay. So here, first off, I'll show you this. This was actually a gift recently to me from Paige from Pixel. She gave this to me. And it's this weird ass. It's this, like, those cowboy ties, right? That they wear where they do they tighten up. It has like a circuit board on it as kind of the neck noose part of it. And I thought that was really cute. She was holding on to it for me, and she's like, "Oh, Brian, you got to have this." She just gave me that. Well, boy, was that about a month ago, maybe. Anyway, this is probably the weirdest thing I've gotten here, and that is, and trust me, I'm not trying to hypnotize you here. This is a necklace that sometimes I actually do wear. And you might notice on there's the Eye of Ra with various little glyphs circling it. Okay. Now, I mean, that has nothing to do with Stargate. It's not a Stargate thing at all. Maybe that's why people wouldn't be surprised that I have it. But yeah, that's probably the weirdest thing. I think that if somebody saw me having an Eye of Ra thing in here, that they would, or Eye of Horus, depending upon who you ask, maybe they'd find that kind of strange. I don't know. Let me go for one more thing. We've actually got somebody in the Hangout that we'll get to in just a second. We'll get to Daniel here. I'll pull down one other thing that you might find kind of interesting. So this is a real, I mean, it's not like an antique, but it's a real gladiator sword. This is quite, if I pull it out of its sheath, it is quite sharp. It's Roman design, of course. And yeah, that is the real deal there. So I think that might also shock some people, but this thing is sharp and I sharpen it. It is quite sharp. I'm not going to say what else I do with that, but regardless, actually, if some people have followed me around on social media, you might have some idea of why I would have a gladiator sword, but I think that would shock some. Let's just take a quick look in the YouTube chat here, see what's going on. Let's see. Eye of Horus. Yeah. Gladius, right. A gladius sword. That's the official name of it. So anyway, you know what? I'll pull it out of the sheath here quick. No sexual innuendo there. And and let's see if I can get cut live on live video here. This could be the end of me, but there it is. And as you can see, it's triple black, which would you expect nothing less from the Golden Stallion? And except for where it gets sharpened, obviously the black doesn't stick that way. But if I ran my finger on that, it'd be an instantaneous cut. This thing's pretty serious. Hopefully nobody walks into the studio because I just put it down and it might stab them if they tried walking in. So I'll have to listen for that. But anyway, enough of the little tour of the BDSM studio. That cannot be the most exciting audio whatsoever. But let's get to, we got Daniel. Daniel, if you had a question you want to get on the Hangout, let's do this, man. There he is.
How's it going?
Going good. How are we doing, man?
It's logging in with video, and I see you pulling out a huge motherfucking sword. That's it's not something I see every day. But
yeah, we're
whatever floats your boat.
That's right.
Whatever punctures your dinghy. I don't know. Whatever. I don't know what the right analogy here is.
I always use the wrong analogies all the time. Don't worry about it. Yeah. So what do you got, man?
So I heard this morning the response to my question. Those who don't know, I asked about. I asked Brian what his beef is with Ethereum, and for the record, probably I should start out by saying that I'm not an Ethereum fan, and I hold very little, if any, of Ethereum. So my question is not trying to bolster it, especially not at this bad time of its life. But I guess the part of my question that wasn't answered was more along the lines of: are you criticizing Ethereum for Ethereum, or are you criticizing Ethereum as a smart contract platform? And the reason I ask it is because it seems like a lot of the stuff that you said in the past about Ethereum being, I'm pretty sure you didn't sort of coin the phrase, because I think I heard it elsewhere, but you did give credit at some point. I don't remember who it's due, but it's Turing vulnerable as opposed to Turing complete, and I think that was like one of the things that you harped on about for quite a while at the beginning. And obviously, right at the very beginning, we didn't know about the lack of scaling or the inability to scale, because, I mean, proof of work blockchain, was pretty much, I mean, except for NXT or maybe Purecoin or whatever that had, proof of stake, that was a standard. And, blockchain scaling in terms of Bitcoin is just as much a problem as blockchain scaling in terms of Ethereum. So we didn't have the DAO hack. We didn't have, scaling issues. The big issue that I remember you talking about was sort of the Turing vulnerableness of it. And granted, now it's become a lot more evident, a lot clearer that there is a problem with scaling, that other blockchains have decided to either use different consensus mechanisms or doing different things, layer 2 solutions or whatever, to go about it in a different way. Be that as it may, I guess the part of my question that wasn't answered is there, do you have a fundamental problem against a blockchain that is meant to be like a world computer, a world virtual machine or whatever, that is Turing complete and that allows you to write contracts on it? If so, why? And if not, what is the alternative? And I think in my email it was like a question of like, well, should each blockchain use case have its own blockchain with its own opcodes or whatever? Like for instance, then or Horizon, whatever. They've got a whole platform of things that they can do. Right. They're not relying on Ethereum or EOS or whatever to doing. But on the other hand, like it's going to be hard to create your own blockchain for every little thing. Like if you wanted to put supply chain on a blockchain, or if you wanted to put various other sort of interesting things that are going on right now in the space and enterprise space or whatever, to put it on the blockchain that really allows you to cut out the middleman, you wouldn't really be able to put that on Horizon. You wouldn't be able to put that on Bitcoin. You would have to either create your own blockchain that is not Turing complete, that has its own opcodes that are specific to that use case, and spin up a whole new blockchain, or you're using a platform like Ethereum or EOS or Neo or Cardano, take your pick of whatever it is, and just utilize the Turing completeness of that in order to enable your application. So what's your take on a Turing complete smart contract platform? And are your issues with contract, creating a contract out of everything that, hey, I don't accept your blockchain, so I'm not going to partake in your contract? That's a valid comment, but that's a valid comment for pretty much everything, right? That would have a smart contract platform in it. So long-winded question. I'll let you take over from here, but I think you see where I'm coming at.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure I got you. I wish I should have, after I recorded that, I was like, I should have read the whole question like out on the air, like, because it was a great question and I loved what you wrote up. So yes, the answer is yes. I have a fundamental, like that's kind of, in fact, I'm just going to mute you here quick, Daniel. You can,
sorry.
No worries. There you go. You can unmute if you want to jump in, but, so a statement that I would have liked to have made on episode 295 of Sovryn Tech about Ethereum as well is that I don't just have, like, it's not like Ethereum has tech problems. It has fundamental problems. Okay. And those fundamental problems, you kind of hit on it, is that, I mean, and again, I did not come up with the phrase of Turing vulnerable. It gets credited to me a lot, actually, still online, but that was not me. But anyway, so my argument with that is that Bitcoin, like Satoshi Nakamoto, whatever that is, made Bitcoin, like, there's a lot of features Bitcoin doesn't have, like it's not Turing complete. That's by design. That's for security. Okay. Like there's a reason for that, because she could have pulled off an Ethereum, like, I mean, I don't know that's such a long stretch of thought. I don't know that Vitalik came up with that brilliant of a fucking idea, to scale off, or to come off of Bitcoin with the concept of Ethereum, of this like world computer. Yeah, I have a fundamental problem with this idea of a world computer, and a lot of it comes down to mainly a lot of it has to do with, like I said yesterday, what people want to do with it, and it does come down to, okay, how do we enforce this stuff? What does that enforcement look like? And that is a real issue. Now, you bring up a great point, okay, about, well, you want alternatives, and I'll explain a couple of alternatives that we can do as far as that goes. But like, okay, so say we want a blockchain, like the alternative would be is that, okay, so you don't have a Turing complete system. So everybody, for every use case, like supply chain or medical chain or whatever kind of blockchain you want to do for whatever purpose, you're going to have to create a separate blockchain for each of those things. If you don't have one that you can just build all of those if you don't have one Turing complete system effectively that you could build all of those blockchains off of. Okay. I am suggesting that, yeah, that's about what you would want to do, but also understand that I am coming from the perspective of someone who is looking for, okay, what exactly would the application of blockchain technology look like in a free market? Because the releasing of the Kraken, that is Bitcoin. No, I don't mean the Kraken exchange either. Okay, when Bitcoin, came out there, I mean, with the white paper, we all know this. It was very libertarian, and it was a free market answer getting put upon the world. All right, and that's initially what got people excited about Bitcoin, right? And Vitalik and a lot of the guys involved with Ethereum are, libertarians or anarchists of a type, or at least they used to be. And at the time that I started to get very critical of Ethereum, it was when blockchain still felt like an anarchist technology, like literally a technology designed for anarchists and for anarchists to help usher in their kind of world. And a lot of people that were very hot about Ethereum were absolutely about that. Okay, we can use this to replace governments. We can use this to replace this, blah, blah, blah. And so it turned into, with that in mind, okay, well, yeah, but if we're actually in a free market, what is this going to look like? Like how would Ethereum play ball within that system? And here's the thing is that and I know there's people who disagree. I know there's people who have different opinions economically of what this will look like. In my opinion, in an actual free market, no governments, in an actual free market, you would end up with very small scale. You'd end up with thousands, if not millions, of small scale economies. Okay. And I've brought up this example many times, that when we can look back in world history, not even just 100 years ago, when we had what you could argue would be freer markets, perhaps when American influence wasn't so strong and when there wasn't so much imperialism, or at least imperialism wasn't so well managed, shall we say. You didn't have one currency, or you didn't have fewer currencies, you had more. So effectively, when there's more freedom, there are more currencies. And that's the thing, is that like a world computer, regardless if it's decentralized on a blockchain, a world computer, I don't think would be as nimble, would be as efficient, and would be as, efficiency bakes in a lot into that term, but I don't think it'd be as resilient, even though I know decentralization, the argument is that it's automatically resilient. I don't think so. I don't think it'd be as powerful as some kind of more localized, some kind of regional blockchain that addresses the main area. Now, people will say, but what about globalization? How are you going to handle that? Well, I mean, that's easy. The digital nature of all of this makes conversion a non-issue. That doesn't lead it to being where there's only going to be one blockchain or one currency. It just means that, because that's the thing, is that if we actually respected individuality, if we didn't think that everybody had to live one way, we'd realize that people are going to live in all kinds of ways, and they're going to need technologies that adapt to the way that they live, or the way that they interact, or how they do commerce, or whatever. Okay, so having one system that everything kind of runs off of, on a personal level, I'll say, to pull down a term, I'll say as a cypherpunk, I think that's a horrible idea. But beyond that, I think in an actual free market system, you would have, there's no way people would just build off of one. Everybody would be trying out all these different things. And I don't think they'd want to do it off of Ethereum, because eventually, again, the smart contract problem, the hacks are going to happen. And then also, people are going to want to develop their own, and they're going to know their area better than anybody else. Okay. And they're going to tailor it to work within that area. So again, I think a world computer is tantamount to like a world government. And, I know there's people who think that's a good idea. And actually, I think a lot of Vitalik's writings, that was another concerning thing for me, is Vitalik's writings were very philosophical. And not that that's a problem, because Satoshi's were philosophical too, but Vitalik's philosophical writings were like Pythagoras. Like, it was this very, very odd, he's getting into all this philosopher king bullshit and like getting into these, the world's going to work this way. And it really, as soon as you hear that language, give me a break. Like, I mean, that's so anti-freedom. So I guess right. You wanted alternatives. Okay. So if it's not going to be that, what is it actually going to be? I mean, if people wanted to run off of like a larger blockchain of some kind, I think that its use case should be limited, just like I think Bitcoin should very much just be money, unless, and I've recommended this in the past, I think the more interesting thing to do with Bitcoin was colored coin, but people have like, this gets into the argument of, so the thing is, you can't really make money off of colored coin. Okay. You can make money off of side chains. You can make money off of like some other things that people want to do with Bitcoin and the way that they want to add on to it. With colored coin, it's such a beautiful, simple idea, but nobody's going to take their time to develop it, because I think everybody sees, well, shit, we can't get an investor off of this idea. There was attempts at making colored coin wallets and everything, but they never got funding. There was a Coin Prism, there was some other ones. And I know, like, I followed the companies and I've talked to people at them, where they just, nobody got on board with this idea of colored coin, where that's a very simple idea where you don't have to do a whole bunch of new code. You don't have to make it Turing complete, but you can give a blockchain a little bit of adaptability to do new things where, for example, like a green Satoshi, or, as in a unit of a Bitcoin, a green unit of a Bitcoin could represent your car, or, it could represent these different things perhaps that you own. Now that's still going to get into the enforcement problem of how do you do that? But that's one way that I would go, that if you, keep the blockchains very stupid and simple, kind of like the internet, you want dumb pipes, right? Well, I think you want dumb blockchains, more or less, that are more purpose built. That way they can handle what's going on. But if you need some kind of adaptability within it, I think the concept of color coins is a brilliant idea to go with. And if anything, I think that actually it wasn't long after colored coins became a thing that suddenly Ethereum becomes an idea. And I sort of wonder if it was trying an attempt at like going where colored coins could have gone, but doing it in what people consider to be, I don't know, the way to go about it. But like this idea of one giant world computer, I can't get behind that. And I don't think that that's how things, I don't think it's the most efficient. I don't think it's the best use of the technology. I don't think it's how it would work under the world that supposedly at one point, at least, Vitalik was interested in, or that, and that some like Charles Hoskinson and some of the others involved. Charles Hoskinson was, really behind the Ron Paul movement and everything. These guys were big names at Ethereum. That were all about that. So, I have to hold them at their philosophy. I know a lot of people don't do that. They don't hold, technologists or developers and look at their philosophy. But as I always say on Sovryn Tech, you have to look at, like, there's no way when you code something that your way of thinking isn't baked into that in some form or fashion. That just naturally happens. That's why, computer courses used to come with, liberal arts packages, effectively. Like you had to go through courses in the humanities before they'd even let you program a computer. That's how things used to be. But, that's not that way anymore. And we might be losing something because of that. But regardless. So I don't know, does that answer that, Daniel? I know you're still muted. I don't know if you have something more. Go for it.
Oh, yeah, no, it certainly does. I don't want to paint you in a corner.
Sure.
So I just wanted to hear you out all the way. I think what I'm hearing you say is that just in general, the idea of a smart contract platform, regardless of if it's Ethereum or if it's EOS or Neo or whatever, you're not a fan of that for the reasons that you stated. It's not.
Yeah.
Ethereum goes down and EOS replace it, you're going to have the same critiques with EOS, even though maybe some of the critiques around whatever scaling will go, but there'll be other critiques around something else. But generally speaking, it will be the smart contract element of it that is the sort of the nail in the coffin, if that's my understanding of what you're saying.
Yeah, no, I think you got it. I mean, even if they could solve the speed issues like Stellar's trying to and so on, you're still going to run into, I think there's genuine ethical problems, and then you're just going to run into where, again, if this was really, if it was a real Wild West, we'd see just how quickly like that it wouldn't be the best use of this technology. Like it wouldn't be the way that most people I think would want to really interact with it. But I mean, I grant you that's hypothetical on my part, because there's people who make an argument the other way around that actually if you had a genuine free market, if you had a Wild West, there would just be one currency, and that there'd just be like
by the way, I really don't believe that that's the case. And actually, so I was in a blockchain meetup when I was in Israel at one point, and Bancor, I don't know if you know them, but they're actually based out of Eyal Herzog and Gali Ben-Artia. They're based out of Israel, and I heard them talk. They gave a talk about the long tail in currencies, where like the long tail is like if you think about like the number of really small impact things, that's statistically speaking that's a long tail, but that's what really makes or breaks, that's what makes things go viral. It's the really large number of small things, and YouTube was essentially monopolizing on or capitalizing on the long tail of video creation, as opposed to like TV channels or whatever that existed. Right. Before that, there was one or two, three channels, and now there's like a gazillion channels. So they're doing the same thing, trying to sort of create liquidity in multiple currencies, basically saying it doesn't make sense that you'd have, for the same reason that it doesn't make sense that you'd have one currency for the entire European Economic Zone or the EU, it doesn't make sense that you'd have an entire currency for the world, like one currency for the entire world. And the same thing goes with everything else. But the problem is that when you have so many currencies, you don't have the liquidity. So the technological problem to fix is not creating one world currency. The technological problem to fix is how do you create liquidity that will allow small currencies that are very thinly traded to actually be traded simply and effortlessly. So that's something that's interesting, not something that we have time for today. But I 100% agree that with your statement. I don't think in the Wild West there will be one currency. I think in the Wild West there will be a way to solve for frictionless currencies. And if the technological advances are not there, then you'll have one currency to make it frictionless. But if technological advance is there, then you'll have a gazillion currencies and it will be done frictionlessly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, I have to run. You don't have to answer this, but 2-second question. What would your life look like if you realized that Craig Wright was Satoshi? I know you mentioned it, but I was like, okay, I gotta ask.
Oh man! All right. Well, thank you, Daniel.
Yeah. Okay. I'll hear the answer to that on the audio if you do. Okay. Take it easy.
Yeah,
bye.
All right. Bye. Wow. Yeah. So Craig Wright, what would my life look like? I would be wrong, because I have ardently said that he is not Satoshi at all. And I know everybody wants to ask, well, then who do you think is Satoshi? I'm not necessarily going to go down that rabbit hole, but if he was, oh boy, I don't even know how to answer that. It's like, well, because isn't he a big supporter of Bitcoin Cash? That'd be so depressing, because he's the idiot that, or boy, should I say that? Well, anyway, I'll say it. He's the guy that said, that effectively the banking system, the present, banking system that we have, that's decentralized enough, which is another thing that leads me to think he's not Satoshi at all, because Satoshi was arguing for, or at least as I understand it, was arguing for extreme decentralization. And he's talking about on the order of that, well, if Bitcoin Cash only has some odd 20,000 nodes, that's fine because it works for the banking system. Look, the banking system doesn't work. How long do we have to wait for so much fucking money to get transferred and all this crap? I mean, it's nonsense. So yeah, I'd be very worried if he were Satoshi. So, all right. let's see. What do we got in the YouTube chat here? Let's see. I think Vitalik may be buying into his own hype. Yeah, it feels like it, because he thinks he's got an opinion about everything. And I have no evidence to suggest why his opinion should mean anything more than, anyone else on Twitter, quite frankly, other than with blockchain, like maybe specifically, but he seems to be answering shit about everything. Let's see. Here's another one. You don't. Okay. Do you approve of Google Titan Key? Yeah. So I have ordered one of these, but they are like on a backlog for whatever fucking reason. I think everybody got all hot and bothered and excited and thought that Google was doing something special. Turns out they're really not doing anything special at all. These are pretty much the same exact technology that YubiKey and other companies are putting out there. There's nothing really unique with this at all, other than it may have it'll have a, maybe a more unique key structure. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that allows it to be recognized. Now, when I first got asked about Google Titan Key, I said this is probably for the Android or the Google. It's actually Google. It's for your entire Google account, not just Android. But the advanced protection program that they have. Now, I've looked into this, and I've actually been tempted just to add in for the Dark Android book to try out being a part of the Android or of the advanced protection program. And it is true that Google Titan Key will absolutely work with the advanced protection program from Google. And what this is, we talked about it years ago when it was first announced. The advanced protection program is where your Google account gets really locked down. Like if you're a celebrity, politician, activist, something like that, you might want to have your account really secure. Now here's and one of the ways that they do this is you have to have 2 extra factors of authentication. Okay. So you're going to, Google Titan Key would meet that because you'd have your authenticator. And then you'd also, your OTP authentication in your app. And then you would have the authentication of the physical USB key that the Google Titan Key. Okay. And the irony is that when you read about the advanced protection program, they're telling you, well, the fact that you're using your Google account to log into other things, this is a potential exploit. And so you won't be able to do that anymore. They go down this whole list of things that you're not going to be able to do once you're enrolled in the advanced protection program. And the irony is that these are all arguments for why I've said don't use your Google account for such and such, and don't do this with an account, any account, let alone Google. They're admitting that these are potential exploits. All these things that they're telling you to do, outside of the advanced protection program. It's fucking hilarious. I wanted to actually talk about it during the Larry Page segment of episode 295 because, he's like, well, I got to respect my privacy. I got to take care of my privacy. But no, you can't. And just okay, you want to be you want actual security, like the advanced protection program. Well, then you need to do all the things that, normally Google is suggesting that you do with your Google account. The cognitive dissonance. They know what they're doing, right? They absolutely know what they're doing because they know that if they actually offered you genuine security, like the Google Advanced Protection Program leans towards, okay, they know if they actually offered that to you, they wouldn't make any money. Okay, if everybody did that, they'd lose a lot of the data collection that they go through, and they'd be hurting. But they make it. They put it out there effectively because they're trying. Why did they do the advanced protection program if it's so antithetical to their business model? Because they still want to serve these high profile individuals and take them away from, normally those high profile individuals will use Apple, or historically they would use BlackBerry or something. They want that customer base. Okay. They want that money coming in because, they got to buy the products, et cetera, et cetera. But it's hilarious. Everybody should be doing exactly what Google recommends on how to secure your fucking Google account. But if they did that, Google wouldn't have ads and all this other shit. They wouldn't have all this tracking data about you. And it's so ironic. It's just fucking ironic about that. So the Google Titan Key, fine and dandy thing. In fact, the only thing special about it is that it comes with 2 keys, which is what I've always told people, because everybody, the instant I say use a YubiKey, they say, well, what if I lose it? You buy 2. Okay. And so the Google Titan Key, of all ironies, happens to cost, $50, right? Which is the cost of 2 YubiKeys. And so, more or less. And so, they're solving their own problem. They know if you lose it, well, okay, you've got the second one. And like they get it. The Bluetooth nature of the Google Titan Key, somebody might have kind of concerns around that, but Bluetooth, the way that this is being used, I don't think it's so much of a concern. And I kind of like Bluetooth more than NFC because that gives it a lot more options as far as adaptability goes. But yeah, so I don't necessarily have a concern around that. Let's move on to another question here. Let's see. You never got into anime. I love anime. I love anime. Watch it all the time. I think Robotech is the most romantic television series ever made. I'll say that in a heartbeat. I could have a huge conversation around anime. Maybe that's something, if you want, you can ask for like a Wednesday Q&A, because that would take me a little while to talk about. But Record of Lodoss War. I like a lot more of the classics than the new stuff, frankly. Just because the classics are so fucking epic. They're so huge. I love hentai. I'm a huge fan of hentai. I espouse the watching of hentai to anyone. I think it's perfectly healthy and wonderful thing. So yeah, I'm totally on board with anime. Let's go on to something else. Let's see. You don't support any private police, but do you support a private court system? That is a big question about a private court system. I support communities setting up. Effectively, you could set up like a homeowners association if you want. Okay. You can have something that looks like a court system, where a court system starts to not look like freedom, starts to not look like actual anarchism, is that if you can't walk away from, like, say, so this is just one possibility. This is, like I said, this is a massive conversation. It's a great question, but it's a massive conversation really to have. We got somebody in the Hangouts and we'll get to that in just a second. You would have to have an agreement, right? You would all have to agree, okay, we are going to abide by such and such rules. Okay, maybe not laws, but rules. You are accurate that I'm not a supporter of private police. But anyway, you'd have these certain rules and everything that you'd have to set up, okay? And that you'd all have to agree to. The problem with that is that for you to, like, you should have the same freedom that you had to voluntarily agree to those rules. You should continue to have the same voluntary freedom to no longer abide by those rules. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that doesn't come with some kind of consequences. It can, okay? Or, and those consequences can be something outside of you. But I don't think that if you leave that system of rules that you agree to, like a private court of some kind, I don't think that there should be a penalty where, like, as an example, there shouldn't be a penalty when you want to leave, because that's not freedom. If you can't walk away from it, how are you in anarchy? How are you in freedom? Okay. And the reason I say what I mean by, like, there can be consequences, meaning that, okay, you don't get to interact with this person or something, or they choose to not interact with you because you're not part of their little rule system anymore. What I mean by this is that, for example, if you want to stop being a citizen of the United States, by law, you have to pay out such and so much money to do that. Okay. You have to pay out something that you earned yourself. Okay, that you did the blood, sweat, and tears for. All right. Now, I think that that's ridiculous. And that's the thing, is that within a private court system, I guess I could accept it. But if you have to give up something of your blood, sweat, and tears to be able to leave that system, no, then I don't agree with the private court system. And a lot of what people talk about, like these dispute resolution organizations or whatever, all come with those kinds of consequences. And I think that's inherently anti-freedom, because again, if you can voluntarily agree to it, you should be able to voluntarily leave as well. And this is where we get into Max Stirner's concept of the union of egoists, which I recommend people read up on. Even people that don't like egoism and don't like Max Stirner, they read about the union of egoists and they go, oh, now that's a way to put people together. Like, that's a way for humanity as a social species to interact. Michel Onfray, who is not an egoist, he's a hedonist, but he's not, he's an anarchist too, but he's not an egoist, but he loves the union of egoists. And that kind of talks about that, is that, look, the people, you got to be able to walk away from this shit without penalty of like a real penalty against you so much. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. That's a huge conversation. If you want to write out some kind of rebuttal and have me go over, I am happy to do that. And I'll understand, like, if you write into me, generally, if someone writes into me, if I get hot and bothered, like if I start yelling and everything, I'm not yelling at you. Okay. I'm yelling at like kind of the ethereal hattery that exists on planet Earth, unfortunately. And there really is, in fact, actually I was listening to one of my favorite Bee Gees songs, and I don't know how I never got this lyric. But it just hit me. And the song is How Deep Is Your Love? But there's a point in it where they're saying, I'm going to look it up really fast, but it's like, we're living in a world of fools breaking us down when they all should just let us be. And I'm like, how did I never hear that? That's such a beautiful thing to say, and so weird to hear in such a beautiful love song too. That effectively Barry Gibb's calling everybody an idiot. And I'm like, well, that's true. And shit, if the Bee Gees say it, if the Bee Gees, the most cheesy, loving people on the planet Earth, if they say that the world's full of fools, man, if that's not the fucking truth. So anyway, why don't we go to, I think Jacob was in first. We actually got Jacob and Rob in the Hangout, but let's go to Jacob first. And maybe Rob wants to jump in, in between on the conversation. But Jacob, man, how we doing?
Not bad. Yourself?
Doing pretty good. Whew, busy as hell, but doing good.
I see your shirt is stating two of your major interests.
Yeah, gaming and history. Yeah, this is the gaming historian T-shirt I bought as soon as I love that guy on YouTube, Norman Caruso. Just a brilliant. If people ever want to have like just an amazing time watching some YouTube videos, he's where it's at. But anyway, right on, go for it, Jacob.
Yeah, so a while back you coined the whole Amazon world domination tour phrase.
Yeah.
And before a lot of people were really noticing that.
Mm-hmm.
And recently I've been reading the Everything Store, which was the history of Amazon and biography of Jeff Bezos.
Right.
And got me to thinking, since, Amazon was kind of, it's been there for a while and it's taken a long time to get to where it is, but Bezos has seemed to have had these plans from the very beginning. And you've mentioned that, you have some ideas of what his ultimate goals may be in, years down the line. And, he's got this Blue Origin, the space company.
Right.
They're not as flashy as SpaceX, but I was wondering, you think maybe, they're, he's taking a long time to build up Amazon. Maybe, he's keeping a lot of things under wraps at Blue Origin that could be, blowing away what SpaceX has eventually. He doesn't have the same type of, he doesn't seem to be as much of a media whore as Elon Musk. So,
yeah.
So I'm just wondering, could we be looking at the Jeff Bezos interplanetary domination tour anytime soon?
So interesting thing. Now Blue Origin's actually been around for a little while, and Bezos's part in it was not just like recent. It's only recently that Bezos has even like really done many public appearances. Okay. Which some might want to start attributing to nefariousness, and maybe, but Blue Origin had been around for a good long while. I actually know one of the guys that was one of the initial actual engineers there. His name's Scott. I'm not gonna go in much further than that. But anyway, his Bezos's part in it was really, really minimized, and you pretty much had to be an investor to know about it. And Blue Origin at the time, like the designs that they had and the plans that they had in mind were pretty far out stuff. So, but it's been a really quiet company. Definitely, like you said, not as flashy as SpaceX, but again, Blue Origin's been around for a really long time. Just people didn't know about it until kind of Bezos's attachment to it. And when Bezos really started hunting down a lot of these Apollo capsules and all these things that were just, floating in the ocean, that's when he started to get some kind of press around it. I can definitely see Bezos knows where it's at, well, here's the thing. Like I've said, I genuinely believe that Bezos wants like a Star Trek future. he's not the only tech giant or, CEO tech giant that's wanted that. Steve Jobs was blatant about it. And yeah, I can definitely see where he's looking to the stars. And he's doing some very clever marketing right now where he's saying that by going to the stars, we're protecting the Earth. And there's some truth to that, certainly. But yeah, I don't. What more do you have on that, Jacob?
Oh, not much. I mean, like you said, in the book, like they mentioned like how early it actually did start, and for several years you couldn't find any information on it. So he's keeping a lot of things under wraps, and it just got me wondering what he's they're more public now, but what is he still keeping under wraps?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the best thing you can say, and part of, because I've actually had people ask me like, wow, you really did call this with Amazon. Like, how'd you know? And so on. And part of the way I knew was that, so one of the earliest pictures you can find of Jeff Bezos, and also people don't know he'd kind of pull these stunts at investor meetings as well. But one of the earliest pictures you can find of him from like back in like 96 or 97, he's holding a book by Alfred Bester. I think he's holding Destination, or The Star Is My Destination, or is that Destination Void? Whatever. I don't think he's holding The Demolished Man. But yeah, I think it's The Star Is My Destination that he's holding. And I mean, he is, no joke, he is a hardcore sci-fi fan. In fact, I think I bet he could give me a run for my money on trivia as far as sci-fi goes. And there seems to be a thing with when people get really deep into science fiction, and this is true when you listen to science fiction authors and so on, when people are really into it, even George Lucas, they have a lot of ideas about how the world should work, and there's almost a drive for the world to somehow become something, that's very futuristic or whatever like that. And so the idea that Bezos had world designs, for me, a major part of that was knowing just how hardcore of a science fiction fan he was. I mean, science fiction turns it turns people into activists, whether they realize it or not. I mentioned a lot with Star Trek. Star Trek is wildly subversive. And if your parents knew just how subversive Star Trek was, they never would have let you put it on the television screen. I mean, conservatism, I like to think that I'm doing something about conservatism. No, Star Trek is wiping the floor with conservatism, and it's been doing it for 40 years. And people don't know. They don't realize it, because it's just fun entertainment or whatever. But those ideas, they seep in. And when you got those classic voices like Shatner and Stewart, you can't, it stays with you. So yeah, science fiction, really is such a powerful thing. And that, yeah, I think definitely Bezos is looking at a very science fiction future, and as wild as he can go with it. So that's what I got on that. But anything else, Jacob? Otherwise, we'll go to Rob.
No, that's it. Just wanted to mention that a little bit. So I'll just hop off here. So
sure thing, man. Yeah, thanks. Robin, how we doing, man?
Good. How are you doing, man?
Doing good. I was just listening to the novel the novel that never needed to be written for the movie that never needed to be made.
Oh man, you're taking one for the team there.
Yeah. I'm listening to Solo Star Wars Story Expanded Edition. Holy shit!
I don't think I can do it, man. I don't think I can do it.
Well, I'll do the review for you then.
Okay.
Anyway, so for the new patrons that don't know, Robin, of course, does the Star Wars update with me for patrons only. We get a real treat and the two of us just have some of the most fun we have in a month every time we do it. So the September one is coming, and it's going to be hot. But what do you got, Rob?
We talk about ancient history stuff, and sure. I've had Magicians of the Gods on my back burner for a while now. I just recently started getting into. Yeah, that's the latest one from a couple of years ago, I think. Yep. And I'd kind of I'd fallen out of the alternative or fringe history stuff for a while, but I'm starting to really get back into it now. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that came up recently I had no idea about is I'd for a long time always accepted kind of like the mainstream narrative about Atlantis being more of an allegory.
Yeah, sure.
And then I discovered this. I don't know if you've heard of the Richat structure out in West Africa.
No, it's not ringing a bell for me. Go for it.
Yeah, you might want to look that up on Google Maps or just on image on DuckDuckGo, the images or whatnot.
Sure.
There's also a documentary called Visiting Atlantis, and you can find it on YouTube.
Okay.
It really makes a compelling case for this geological formation, and it really lines up with the description that Plato gave in the Cretaeus and the Timaeus.
Okay. All right. No, I'm definitely going to look into it. I mean, Atlantis is a massive passion of mine.
Yeah, me too.
Specifically.
I'd kind of fallen out of it for a while, and I always thought, the stories are interesting, but it's just that, there's been so many different theories, and they all kind of seem to fall short.
Right.
And this, to me, after watching this documentary and looking at the images, the satellite images, because we didn't even know about this structure until the advent of space flight, and actually it's astronauts that use, and it's kind of referred to as the Eye of the Sahara, and astronauts actually use it for finding position, while they're up in space on Earth.
So this is specifically in Africa, this area you're talking about.
Yes, it's on the west coast of Africa.
Okay.
And if you look at, just sort of some of the geological features around it, it definitely does seem at one point that there was massive flooding on the west coast of Africa.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. We have so many historical documents that point at a lot of things, especially in northern Africa, that are just gone, but would appear to have been there. Like they were there. There's the second Sphinx, which I think absolutely is somewhere there. I mean, you got a lot of sand covering a lot of shit, and it's
right. Well, I mean, even the stories of Atlantis, I mean, Plato says that he got it from his ancestor Solon, who got it when he went to Egypt. Right. And he got this information from Egyptian temple, and that's now sunken into the Nile Delta.
Sure. Yeah. So a couple things on that. One is actually, I'm going to recommend a book to people, and that it's one I just recently finished. I mentioned it in last month's Sovryn Tech newsletter for August, and it's called The Stolen Legacy by George G.M. James. And this guy makes it's a short book, but it is a scathing assault on the idea that all of our philosophy and democracy, all these different ideas that we attribute to the Greeks, actually came from the Egyptians. And in fact, he brings up the point that Aristotle and a lot of even Plato and a lot of these other, which Plato would at least, admit it, that he got some shit from Egypt. But that a lot of these people are, even Socrates, they're all quoting Egyptian authors. They couldn't. And he brings up the point where Aristotle is talking about chariots. The Greeks didn't have chariots at the time. There's no doubt he was talking. He was just copying, taking notes from Egyptian works at Alexandria or something. And it's a really, really amazing read as far as that goes, that a lot of this stuff, is a lot of what we consider to be Greek lore. Or, I mean, Greek mythology, we kind of accepted, sort of morphed away from, from the Egyptian pantheon, from Egyptian mythology and so on. But that a lot of these things absolutely, do come from, are from originally from ancient Egypt. I mean, and the book is getting into a broader point, saying that, it gets into racism, frankly, and it's saying that, people are saying nothing good has ever come out of Africa, and their point is that no, all of civilization, all of philosophy, everything that you think is attributed to the Greeks or something like that, no, it all came from Africa.
Well, I think even the ancient Greeks had a saying that all knowledge comes from Egypt.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, and beyond even what this book gets into, Rome, even the Roman Empire considered Egypt to be it was this. They saw it as a holy land. Right. It was this really holy prefect. They kind of considered it their really their ideological backyard. And there's a lot to get into around that. But anyway, that's an interesting book, but I am going to check out that documentary, and I might do a full on review of it.
It's not real long one. And, they made a trip out there, but they weren't actually, it was just two people, and they weren't able to do a whole lot of investigation just because it seemed like sort of a limited budget sort of thing. But there hasn't been any serious investigation of this as either a historical site, an archaeological site, or as a geological, formation. Because the theory is that the structure was formed by basically just a large like magma bubble.
Okay.
And that was eventually eroded. But the theory is that, it kind of makes sense with, the descriptions of Atlantis. It's just as likely that, people would find a natural structure like this and decide to build upon it. And that actually makes more sense to me than trying to build something as elaborate as what is described by Plato.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, okay, that's interesting. I'm definitely going to check this out. The other thing, that people miss is that, like, with the Mediterranean, the Mediterranean didn't look like it did. It wasn't that long ago. There's literally hundreds of cities, in the Mediterranean. That point alone has kind of always made me wonder about Atlantis. Is like there's whole cultures that we've just never known.
Yeah. Well, most of the world didn't look like it did, 12,000 years ago,
right,
after the Young Dryas.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, well, I'm glad that this is, that the shall we say, the hunt for Atlantis has continued, because, yeah, it's. You get too many stories. I grant you, like, not most of them don't call it Atlantis. That's a Plato thing. But you get too many stories of that there was this something. There was this civilization X, that existed at one point. But what the hell happened to it?
Or if not, that there was a huge flood-like catastrophe.
Yes,
that is described by many cultures throughout the world. It's not just in the Bible.
No. Yeah. And shit, all the
and it's all at the same time in history.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, oh man, I could start waxing poetical pretty quick about all of this. Because
don't let me stop you.
Yeah, right. But yeah, there's just there's too much evidence, and we run too quickly to just saying that our ancestors were just making up stories, which is funny because we're attributing like a level of imagination to them that we won't attribute a level of knowledge to, that would require for the same amount, for them to have that amount of imagination to come up with all that shit. They would have to have a certain level of knowledge that at the same time, those same people that would say that they are just imagining it all, that they couldn't have had. But if they have that level of knowledge to allow for that level of imagination, no, they could, all these things that they're talking about could have absolutely been something that they literally saw of some kind, or not literally saw, but that they saw and they talked about it in a certain way.
Right. Well, the thing is there's so much new evidence that's come up just within the last, decade or two.
Mm-hmm.
And that, the historians and archaeologists are just not willing to look at or take seriously, especially like Göbekli Tepe. And,
right.
This, and they're saying that hunter-gatherers did this. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
and my hope is kind of like with a lot of these sort of, social movements we've been having recently, that eventually this hits academia and just people get tired of, the old fuddy-duddies, white men telling us what history is and saying, no, you need to, you need to stop disregarding this shit because of you're either trying to protect your privilege or you're trying to, enforce, the greatness of, Western culture and white people.
Yeah. And this happens. In fact, that book I mentioned earlier, Stolen Legacy, is all about this and how, like, that's all, and I've brought the cases up many times where there is totally a bias. And yes, they are trying to protect their culture. They're trying, like archaeologists and so on. They're not trying to reveal let the truth of history come out. They are trying to protect their narrative.
And they're also trying to protect their own self-interest because they've spent all of this time investing into it and in teaching it to other people, that it massively disrupts, their whatever, money that they do make from it. It threatens that, they feel, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I just looked up that book, Stolen Legacy. If anybody's looking for it, you can find it on Library Genesis.
Oh, nice. Excellent. Perfect. Yeah. Totally worthwhile checking out. Yeah, no, I agree completely. I mean, and this is a problem across the sciences, and it's an ugly thing we don't want to face, you know, because we want to be like that there is a subjective thing. I mean, and history is a particularly tough science because it's really not a science. Like, you really, as painful as it is for me to even say it, unless you were there, you don't know. I mean, because, and this is a popular idea now that people have, that really history didn't start until, you know, we were able to record shit on video. And I would argue that actually even that history is now pretty much gone now that you can edit video to have whatever the hell you want in it.
Right.
So history is not a science, not really is. I mean, it is and it isn't, you know?
Yeah. But I mean, you take in the, you know, like the brief time that the human beings have been on this planet.
Yep.
Which, you know, they say that Homo sapiens arrived, you know, somewhere around 200, 300,000 years ago. Yeah. And then you have, if you want to be more specific, you have anatomically, you know, modern humans are about 50,000 years ago.
Right.
Are you seriously telling me that it basically took us, you know, more than 45,000 years to get our shit together and do something with all the innate curiosity of the human creature?
Right. No, I mean, that narrative's getting blown out because actually just this past week, I think it was, they found in that South African cave, they found it's 73,000 years old, and it's like these 9 red lines drawn inside this cave. And, you know, they're saying it. Look, this is language. You know, that this means something. Like, this isn't just some, it's an abstract. So it's symbolic. So maybe it's just a symbol, or maybe it's some kind of language, but it's not a drawing of some gazelle. You know, this is something that had meaning 73,000 years ago. And that's kicking back a good, 30, 40,000 years from the previous earliest writings.
Right.
Symbology, the symbolism that we had for humans, or from Homo sapiens. Yeah.
I do really think it's long past time that academia kind of, accepted the possibility that at some point the slate was wiped clean for the most part. And that, the lack of preponderance of evidence doesn't mean you need to dismiss what little evidence that there is.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree. And it's good. We covered it. There was an episode a little while back, Stephanie and Ellen were on, where we talked about like this academic paper that came out and said, look, if the dinosaurs built a civilization, we'd have no idea. We can't know.
Oh yeah.
Like it totally would have been wiped clean by just the passage of time. And that can happen. And people don't want to, but I mean, the part of the problem is people's concept of history is like their concept of time, of how long ago it was and so on is really, really off base. That's why I'm such a huge fan. In fact, you can see it behind me, the Holocene calendar, where instead of it being the year 2018, it's actually the year 12,018. That way you can have a better understanding of how much time has actually passed for a lot of this stuff. And you can realize then either that, wow, it actually hasn't been that long, or holy shit, it's been a while.
Yeah.
For example, I mean, you go ahead. Yeah.
A lot of things people don't have any goddamn context for is like what ecologically peaceful era we've been living through. Mm-hmm. And that the amount of devastation that has been racked upon the earth time after time after time.
Right.
And people are worried about global warming. And I'm not saying that's not a concern, but even the worst predictions are far tamer than some of the things that human beings have already lived through.
Yeah, well, and that's a problem and that's a problem that scientists created really over the centuries. In fact, Graham Hancock will talk about that, where like the idea of cataclysmic events, other than like Noah's flood, maybe, and even then when science started separating itself away from religion, one of the first things one of the kind of science's first tenets was, I mean, and I appreciate them separating from religion, but one of their first tenets pretty much is that, okay, cataclysmic events don't happen. Like the flood did not.
Right. Yeah, it was like an overcompensation for.
Right. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so that's
not here again. It is kind of a Western right hubris in that, the only tale of a flood that they pay attention to is the one in the Bible,
right,
and not the many others throughout various cultures all over the planet.
Yeah, absolutely. And even oh boy, I could go on. I think we got to wrap it up. But
right.
Yeah, but it's an awesome subject to get into, and I'm definitely gonna watch that documentary and get more on it. One thing for people to understand is that even with the Bible itself, let's say we're just running off of the Bible, because I think there's some genuine history in there. Certainly with Torah, with the Old Testament, or the Hebrew Bible, which I think is a ridiculous thing to say. No one let me give the Sovryn Tech listeners, I want you to go forward with learning this. Never, ever call it the Hebrew Bible, because that is an insult. There's just an absolute insult. It's the Bible. Of course it's fucking Hebrew. Okay. There's no need. You do not need to qualify it by saying the Hebrew Bible. No, it's the Bible. It's Hebrew. Okay. Deal with it. So anyway, but an old rabbinic saying is that there's 70 faces to Torah. And what that means is that, it's not a literal number of 70. 70 just has a very specific meaning, but it's meaning that there's a lot of different interpretations to that book. And that's what that whole statement means. The 70 faces of Torah is that there's a lot of different ways to interpret it. And so even if one wanted to run with the Bible and run with that in Western civilization, well, you've got 70 different ways to look at that fucker. And, we're not doing it. No one's doing any of that, or at least not enough people are. So anyway, Atlantis, this is a mystery. We're going to look into it. We're going to figure this stuff out. Rob, I appreciate it, man. I always love having you on at any stage. And that's a fascinating subject to bring up. So anyway, thanks a lot for that, man.
No problem, man. Talk to you later.
Yeah, we'll see you on the Star Wars update. Woo. All right. So let me see what I got in the YouTube chat quick, and then we'll wrap this up, because we usually only go about an hour. Sometimes I'll let it run a little bit over. Somebody says best Star Wars podcast ever in reference to the Star Wars update. Thank you very much. I do enjoy the hell out of doing it. Let's see. Would you like to see Atari make a comeback? Not in the form of the Atari VCS or whatever the fuck that thing is that they're coming out with. I'd like to see Atari be like Atari again, but to do so with I'll use this phrase, with tongue in cheek. I want them to come back, but embrace, kind of like the Intellivision, the return, because Intellivision's coming back. They need to embrace it that way, where they need to say, okay, no, we're this retro system and we're this kind of graphics, and we're going to make just the best fucking games that you can make with, whatever 4-bit graphics or whatever the hell it is. I would love to see Atari come back in that way, but every way that Atari has been coming back over the past few years, no, they're completely missing what made Atari great. Including they should pay attention to a lot of these statements from Nolan Bushnell, who founded Atari, where, he says, yeah, the whole violence in video games thing, we don't do that at Atari. Like that would be pretty awesome to have a company like that. Let's see what else we got here. KRS-One, of course, for those that don't know, KRS-One is the hip-hop artist. I guess that's the best term I'll use. KRS-One used to state in his lyrics that Egyptians taught the Greeks. Yeah, I think he's absolutely right. And something to pay attention to is that the term that the Greeks used for the Egyptians meant black people. Got to think about that. And I know you're going to say, like, well, what about Cleopatra and all that? Well, Cleopatra was effectively Greek. Like Cleopatra, these later dynasties in Egypt that were closer to, again, when it was kind of the backyard of Rome, that wasn't, those weren't like necessarily, or at least they weren't completely the same, bloodlines of the Egyptians, like the Middle Kingdom and even more of the New Kingdom. Let's see. So there is another book that asserts capitalism originated from the Middle East. Yeah, I think there's a lot of evidence for that. You look at the Kazakhstan, the Kazakhs, the argument goes very strong that they were really some of the very first capitalists ever, or at least the first people that were espousing free markets. And then there's kind of a Jewish attachment with that, but that gets into that can get into some odd conspiracy theories around that one. But yeah, absolutely. I think the Kazakhs are, the people of Kazakhstan, historically, they've had a couple empires, that they were totally about free markets and so on. And they had the right geography to make it happen. Just like the Kingdom of Israel had perfect geography for trade. It's part of the reason that it thrived. Anyway, let's see. What do you think of Paul Fairbrand's anarchist approach to the scientific method? I will have to look into that and get back to you. Anyway, and then just have a good one, everybody. Got to go. Yeah, so we're gonna wrap this up. That's it. Thank you so much for all of the questions. Great to have everybody. We got 3 participants to come right into the Hangout room. That was a real honor. Thank you for doing that. I just, I want to say, we're wrapping it up now. I just want to say to all of the patrons, there's like 100 of you now exactly. I love you. Like, thank you so much. I know I've said this before, and I say it every once in a while on Patreon shows or even on a Sovryn Tech Prime episode, but thank you. You really do make the show go round and round. You are an absolute, well, to quote a song, you are the wind beneath my wings. I mean, and you really are, because, Sovryn Tech is, the new book that I released, Sovryn Universe Volume 1. I mean, the Sovryn Universe means a very specific thing, a very fictional aspect of the show, but really, like, I've heard from a lot of you. A lot of you have sent me some very kind messages, and some have sent not so kind messages, but a lot of you have sent very kind messages. And yeah, this is the Sovryn Universe is a thing. Like, this is a universe. All the things that we do on the show is very much it feels like its own little fantasy world, its own little universe, doesn't it? Because where else can you go? And, in one, you're talking about blockchains, or you're talking about, I shouldn't say blockchains. You're talking about blockchain. Then you're talking about the Google Titan key. Next thing you know, you're talking about the Rocky movies. Somebody's pulling out a Gladius from from out of nowhere. And then, then we're talking about going to space with Jeff Bezos. And then next thing you know, holy shit, we're talking about finding Atlantis. You tell me where else you're going to go, and you're going to do all of that. That's the Sovryn Universe for you, baby. So anyway, thank you. Someone in the YouTube chat just said you are the best host. I am honored by that. Thank you so much. And of course, total thank you to all of my co-hosts as well. Just the most beautiful people on planet Earth. And yes, you are all of the co-hosts. And again, patrons, you're beautiful too. I love you. So anyway, thank you so much. We'll wrap up the live Hangout Q&A here, and lots of other content to come out throughout September. I know we're already halfway through the month. I can't believe it, but a lot to come. So I will see all of you on the other side.